crime is often treated as a secondary element in fantasy RPGs, which has a tendency to focus on kings, empires, and grand wars. But beneath the polished halls of power lies a world just as influential, if not more so, the criminal underworld. Mostly treated as background noise in a city's slums or as a convenient antagonist, in reality, crime is a fundamental force that shapes societies, economies, and power structures. It is not merely a symptom of civilization, it's often the engine behind it. In tabletop RPGs, a well-developed criminal underworld can offer far more than just quest fodder. It presents opportunities for political intrigue, for faction play, and emergent storytelling. A crime-ridden city isn't just a setting, it's a living ecosystem where power is constantly shifting, alliances are fragile, and survival demands cunning. Gangs, smugglers, and black market networks don't just exist on the fringes of society, they shape economies, undermine rulers, and create entire subcultures with their own laws, traditions, and codes of honor. While many tabletop RPG settings include crime factions, too often are they oversimplified, existing as either cartoonishly evil crime lords or background fluff with no real weight. A well-built underworld, however, adds depth, tension, and player agency to a campaign. When done right, the criminal world isn't just a set of obstacles, it's a parallel power structure, an alternative society that thrives in the cracks of civilization. So for me, there are three key pillars of the underworld: economics, culture, and power. A compelling criminal world isn't just about pickpockets or assassins. As I said, it is a parallel power structure built on these three key elements. First, let's start with the economics. Crime at its core is fundamentally an economic force. Even violent crimes are often perpetuated as a response or an attempt to regain some economic measure. It arises, though, when there is a demand for something that legitimate authorities either restrict, tax, or fail to provide entirely. It doesn't emerge in a vacuum. It flourishes where there are restrictions, monopolies, or gaps in the market. Wherever laws exist, there will be an opportunity to profit by breaking them, and there will always be those who look to profit. So in a well-built world, crime won't just be random theft or acts of violence and smuggling. It'll be a necessary response to economic pressures. And these pressures will create a complex living economy that goes beyond the tired trope of a single thieves guild and would instead form an entire network of interdependent illicit industries. So to make a criminal underworld feel alive, consider dividing it into distinct but interconnected industries, each serving a specific need in the economy. That's smuggling rings, a black market banking system, a vice industry, protection rackets, and organized extortion. All of these things will have their own system of leadership or crime lord that leads them. I find that this approach is way more interesting than the singular static thieves guild that just has their hand in all of the crime. It allows for many factions to be at play, all pushing and pulling in their own directions for the sake of success. At the heart of any functioning criminal underworld is the idea of specialization. No single criminal faction can control every element of the underworld without fracturing under its own weight. Instead, distinct groups emerge, each with a niche or role they play within the greater economy of vice. Smugglers rely on fences and money launderers to offload stolen goods, who in turn rely on corrupt officials to legitimize their wealth. Enforcers keep extortion rackets running, but they are ultimately dependent on the very businesses they exploit. Pushing them too hard, and the revenue stream collapses. This mutual reliance is what prevents unchecked violence from tearing the underworld apart. There must be balance, agreements, and a recognition that cooperation is often far more profitable than bloodshed. Which brings us to the next pillar: culture. Besides being an economic force, crime is very much a culture. Every criminal network develops traditions, taboos, and an internal code of conduct that define who they are, how they operate, and what happens when someone steps out of line. These unwritten laws aren't just practical, they create a sense of belonging, honor, and identity within the criminal underworld. Most tabletop RPG settings reduce crime to chaotic lawlessness, where criminals will backstab each other for profit. But in reality, criminal societies operate on strict internal rules, codes of respect, and shared customs, because in the underworld, trust is a currency. Culture within the criminal world is also shaped by tradition and lineage. Many organized crime groups are bound together, not simply by shared profits, but by a deeper cultural identity. Some criminal organizations function as extended families, where trust is built over generations and loyalty is expected to outlast personal ambition. Others operate on apprenticeship models where experienced criminals will pass down knowledge, techniques, and secrets to the next generation. In both cases, the underworld does not see itself as a collection of disparate criminals. It is a living society with a history, one that remembers debts, betrayals, and who has earned their place. At the heart of criminal culture is loyalty. Criminals tend to treat each other with a deep understanding that their success is often intertwined. Betrayal is one of the most severe transgressions in criminal society, and it is often met with swift and unforgiving retribution. In this environment, trust is earned, and it is valued more than nearly anything else. A thief who betrays their crew might be ostracized, or worse, hunted down. The rules of loyalty are stark. Don't steal from your own, don't cross your partners, and above all, respect the chain of command. The unspoken law is that everyone has a role to play, and deviation from that role risks destabilizing the entire system. However, the loyalty within criminal culture is not necessarily blind or unconditional. It is transactional. Trust is given, but it is always earned through consistent action, respect for the craft, and honoring deals. A street-level enforcer might respect a seasoned burglar's skill and expertise, but would still expect to be compensated for their part in the operation, whether that's through protection, access to resources, or a portion of the loot.
I give you houses, I give you a car, you're family. I thought you'd come around. What the hell is this? Where is gratitude?
Where is my end?
You can't see day from night.
I can see my money is still in your pocket, which is from the yield of my labor.
In criminal society, the concept of honor among thieves is not an idealistic fantasy, but a practical necessity to ensure that transactions and alliances are upheld. Failing to meet one's obligations can cause a ripple effect that ruins reputations and destroys partnerships. In essence, criminal culture is built upon social contracts, agreements, and expectations that, when honored, create stability and cohesion. Loyalty, secrecy, transactional trust, and mutual respect are the cultural pillars upon which this society stands. Criminals treat each other not simply as adversaries or colleagues, but as partners in survival, even if the rules of that partnership are far more flexible and often much more dangerous than those of the legal world.
You need some rest.
I need 500 cases of rum.
You and your men. My guest at the Ritz.
You think I can't float my own hotel room?
I'm making a goodwill gesture. Accept it or not.
How about I make one too?
They operate within their own set of values, their own version of right and wrong, a version that might seem alien or foreign to outsiders, but is essential for the continued existence of the criminal underworld. And so we come to the final pillar. Power. In the criminal underworld, power is not simply about physical strength or brute force. It is the ability to manipulate, control, and influence every aspect of the illicit ecosystem. Power is the fundamental currency within criminal networks, the force that drives every decision, alliance, and betrayal. It is an intangible yet deeply practical quality that influences how crime operates at all levels, from the street corner to the highest echelons of the underworld. To understand power in this context is to understand the complex web of relationships, economics, and strategies that underpin the survival and growth of criminal enterprises. At its most basic level, power in the underworld is about control over resources, whether that be money, influence, territory, or even people. Resources enable individuals and organizations to expand their reach and solidify their position within the criminal ecosystem. A gang that controls a certain block or territory for smuggling holds a monopoly on the profits and the flow of goods in that space. They command the ability to levy protection rackets, to dictate prices, and to manage who gets access to what. But controlling resources is only the first part of wielding power. It's how that control is maintained and expanded that becomes the true measure of influence. Criminal power is also about information. In many ways, information is the most valuable currency in the underworld. A leader who can control or manipulate the flow of information, whether that's through espionage, bribery, or coercion holds a strategic advantage over their rivals. Knowledge of rival movements, the movements of law enforcement, the secrets of other criminal groups, or even just the weaknesses of a potential target is often more valuable than any tangible asset. Criminal organizations often develop robust systems of intelligence gathering, whether that's through loyal informants or a carefully cultivated network of spies. In the underworld, knowledge is power, the power to act, to counter, to control, and to strike first. Leaders who possess this control over information can steer the direction of conflict. They can dictate terms and avoid pitfalls that might trap the uninformed. Violence and intimidation are often what people associate with criminal power, but while they are important, they are not the cornerstone. Violence can be used as an enforcer of power, but it also comes with significant risks. Over-reliance on violence can lead to instability and chaos, undermining the very thing that the criminal underworld values the most: predictability. Power in this sense is better understood not as raw aggression, but as the ability to exercise violence selectively, as a means of consolidating or defending their power. A mob boss who can calmly broker a deal but still execute a well-timed hit when necessary exudes power, not because they are the most violent, but because they have mastered the art of leverage. Violence is the tool, but control over when and how it is used is the true power. Ultimately, power in the criminal underworld is a complex and multifaceted concept. It is about control over resources, manipulation of information, the ability to wield violence with precision, and the influence exerted over both the criminal and legitimate worlds. Those who hold power are not just the most ruthless or the most violent. They are the ones who can weave their influence into the fabric of the underworld, who understand that power is not a finite resource, but a fluid one that requires constant cultivation, negotiation, and adaptation. Power is both the tool and the end goal in the underworld, and those who possess it shape the world around them in ways that few others can comprehend. So in crafting the criminal elements of a tabletop RPG setting, the true potential lies in viewing crime, gangs, and the underworld not as simple villainous tropes, but as intricate, multifaceted systems that breathe life into a world. The underworld isn't just a place for the heroes to stumble upon or a backdrop for low-tier quests. It should be a living, breathing entity with its own rules, hierarchies, and economies that reflect and distort the larger world around it. When done well, it adds an unparalleled layer of depth, complexity, and authenticity to a setting, making it feel not only immersive, but real in ways that echo the complexities of human behavior and society itself. At the heart of this better world building is the understanding that criminal organizations are not inherently simple or chaotic. They are in many ways the underpinnings of an alternative order, a reflection of society's needs, demands, and deficiencies. They thrive not just on violence, but on the control of resources, the flow of information, and the influence they can wield over both the legal and illegal sectors of society. Crafting a criminal underworld that operates with these dynamics in mind makes the world feel not like a collection of plot devices, but like an interconnected, functioning system with its own agendas, alliances, and consequences. The interplay between criminal cultures such as the codes of conduct, the systems of loyalty and betrayal, and the intricate webs of relationships is key to developing an underworld that feels alive. These are not simply groups of thugs working for personal gain. They are systems within the system. They have their own ethics, their own specializations, and often their own social contracts, which govern their actions far more rigidly than some might expect. The inner workings of a criminal group, from the underling to the boss, from the street-level enforcer to the information broker, should be just as well defined as the heroes or antagonists that move through your world. Characterization within criminal circles matters. Just as players have their motivations and moral struggles, so too should those who inhabit the shadows of society. Ultimately, integrating gangs and underworld into world building isn't about making the setting grim or lawless. It's about crafting a world where these elements feel inextricable from the fabric of society itself. The underworld becomes a mirror to the surface world, a darker reflection of the same forces of power, wealth, and influence that drive larger institutions. Whether as allies, enemies, or ambiguous figures in between, the criminal elements in a tabletop RPG setting shouldn't be disposable. They should be as vital, vibrant, and intricate as any other part of the world. And when they are, player agency becomes intricately tied to the world around them. The Underworld's complex network of power, resources, and alliances offer players an arena in which to shape outcomes. Whether they choose to align with criminal factions, undermine them from within, or leverage the Underworld for personal gain, their actions can ripple through both legal and illicit systems. The choices they make have real lasting consequences, shifting alliances, disrupting economies, and even altering the balance of power in the larger world. This depth of interaction fosters a world where player decisions don't just matter, they become integral to the evolution of the setting, giving them the power to mold the very fabric of the society they navigate. How do you all see this though? Is crime and the Underworld a thing in your setting? Do you prefer this simple but effective singular Thieves Guild approach? Why? Let me know in the comments. Either way, thank you for watching. I am Trill, and I hope you enjoyed.